This night occurred about 7 years ago on my way home from my parents' place. I was 22, young, naive, and well, dumb. I had just moved into my first apartment. I was the first of my family to move away from our sleepy old train town that I grew up in. I went to my parents' place every Sunday to visit, but mostly to do laundry and eat Sunday dinner. I lived about 45 to 60 minutes up the highway, so I generally headed home by 6 p.m. On this night in particular, there was a summer thunderstorm that had been pouring down rain relentlessly all day long. My cousins dropped in just as I was packing up to leave after dinner, so I ended up sticking around for a few more hours. I left around 10 p.m. in the pouring rain, and this was the first time after moving from home that I encountered something that truly scared me. I don't know why I never told anyone about this, but I think it had to do with pride. Everyone always gave me trouble about living alone as a single female in a newish area. But anyway, here it goes. Again, I left my parents' place around 10 p.m. in the pouring rain. A side note, I hate driving in rain. So I'm driving down the service road that leads out of town that eventually turns into the on-ramp to the highway. As you're leaving town, the service road turns into one lane, right in front of this quarry train loading station thing. I'm not really clear on what the place is. It always gave me the creeps. If you're unfortunate enough to pass through when a train is crossing the road to load, you'll be stuck there a while. Once the road passes the tracks, it turns back into 2 lanes and goes up a steep hill. As I'm approaching the quarry, I can make out the orange lights on a red cab 18-wheeler sitting in the quarry parking lot. Mind you, it's pouring rain. Visibility is low, so I can't make out the trucker until I'm pretty close to him. As soon as I could make out it was a trucker, it pulls out into the road. I had to slam on my brakes to avoid hitting the trailer on the back of the truck. I skid around on the road until I regained control of the car. So now I'm stuck behind this dummy that just pulled out without paying attention, I assumed. I keep my distance behind him because I'm a little flustered. For the record, my headlights were on, so if he had been paying attention, he should have been able to see me. Honestly, with the heavy rain and low visibility, who knows? So I'm behind this guy as we cross the tracks and begin to climb this steep hill. Despite it turning into 2 lanes on the hill, he's driving right up the middle of the 2 lanes. I figured he didn't realize it was 2 lanes, so I just puttered along behind him, keeping my distance. As soon as he reaches the peak of the hill and the road begins to level out, he moves over to the right lane. Fucking finally. So I move over and begin to pass him. As soon as I get past the front of the truck, he swerves behind me quite abruptly and begins flashing his high beams at me. Usually when someone flashes their lights behind you, in our area anyway, that means turn on your lights. The thing was, mine were already on, and I checked as soon as he started flashing at me. Weirded out, I put my blinker on and safely changed lanes to get out of his way. He follows my lane change and begins honking on his horn aggressively. The honking startled me, and I became a lot more flustered. What the hell did this guy want? I moved out of his way. My headlights are on. So why didn't I just speed up and zip away, you may be asking. Well, I grew up in this area. It had been raining heavily all day long, and I know that the service road floods a little in heavy rain, both on the shoulders and in random spots in the middle of the lanes. It's a small Midwestern town. Our roads are shitty. I had already skidded and nearly wrecked once. I wasn't about to floor it on this bumpy service road that floods and risk getting in a wreck again. There's nothing between that quarry and the highway. About 4 or 5 miles of wooded area. If I got in a wreck, it would have just been him and I. So this went on for the next 4/5 miles to the highway. He began tailgating me, in addition to the high beams and honking. Once the tailgating began, I was in tears. I didn't know what this guy wanted from me. I'm just trying to stay out of his way and get home safely. That's all I wanted. I changed lanes 2 more times, making 3 total. He followed me from lane to lane. As we approached the highway, I floored it. He couldn't accelerate quickly enough to keep up and I lost him. Finally. As soon as I realize I've lost him and I'm safe on the highway, I just lost it. I was a hysterical wreck. After getting on the highway, there's only one place to stop in, a small town the highway runs through. After that, it's all wooded for a good 30 minutes. I thought about getting off at that exit just to calm down and pull it together, but I wanted to go home, so I sped right past it. But really, I should have stopped. Once the city was no longer visible in my rearview mirror, I was much more calm. I managed to scramble my cell out of my purse and put it in my lap just in case. The rain led up to a drizzle the further I went. I was still pretty on edge. There weren't many other cars on the highway, and the majority of them were truckers. I'm cruising along in the center lane when the truck next to me in the passing lane begins blaring the horn and moves into my lane, forcing me over to the third lane. He continued moving over, nearly forcing me off the highway. I sped up and changed lanes right in front of him so that I'm back in the center lane. I slowed down so I'm in line with a front cab. I double-clicked the home button on my phone, the camera shortcut, and rolled down my window. I started taking pictures of the cabbie, and I think the flashes made him realize what I was doing, and he began slowing down until he was behind me again. I got a lot of pictures. I sped up and lost sight of him behind me. I was satisfied I managed to get pictures, but I was just so angry at this point. I pulled over onto the shoulder of the highway and waited for him. I just wanted to get behind him so I could get a pic of the license plate and report this asshole. Sadly, he was on to me. For sure, I noticed headlights behind me. A long way back, but behind me nonetheless. On the shoulder of the highway, I waited, keeping an eye on the truckers passing me by just to be sure I didn't miss him. I noticed a shadow pass through the headlights of the truck, which spooked me quite a bit. Did he get out of the cab? I didn't stick around to find out. I just took off and got home as quickly as possible. The pictures were a total failure. It was still drizzling. The flash combined with the drizzle just resulted in washing out the pictures. I could see the red cab, but no matter what filters I used, there was no making out exactly what the cab said. Red cab trucker, you're the reason I have a dash cam in my car. I hope we never meet again. I'm going to preface that this is an absolutely true story, but I doubt you will have a hard time not believing this, as it is something that can happen to any kid. Back in 2000, when I was 13, I got into a bad habit of sneaking out after my mother went to sleep. One night when I did this, a friend was sleeping over and he sneaked out with me. We both were in great shape, so we could pretty much get from one side of town to the other in about half an hour on foot. It was probably around 11 p.m., and we sneaked out through my window and started walking to a girl from school's house. We make it there easy peasy, no problem, and she comes out and greets us, but nothing really happens because my friend I was with was her ex. Really a waste of time and a dumb choice on my part. But I didn't want to sit there at the house all night because my friend didn't really play video games. I was more of a country boy / athletic type. Let me also say that this being almost 20 years ago, and it being a relatively small town in Oklahoma, there weren't that many people out and about past midnight. Hardly ever. Plus, cops patrolled the town pretty regularly, so you had to be sneaky if you were out on foot, and the drug addicts pretty much stayed indoors. Anyway, we start making our way back to my house, and once we get about halfway across town, this red truck comes hauling ass down the road we are standing on. It caught my attention because of how erratic the driver was being. I'm just standing there staring at it, like what the fuck? My friend looks at me and says, "Do you see that?" We both keep walking, and this truck approaches us, and inside was one scary-ass looking lady. I'm not saying that to be mean, I'm just telling the truth. She was so damn scary. She looked gigantic, her hair was standing straight up, and she looked super spun out on meth, which was a pretty common thing in this town. So she slows down and kind of stares at us, and we keep walking, and I turn back to look around, and this crazy person is turned around and is driving right at us. We bailed right out of there and started sprinting towards some ditch at the end of the road while this truck was literally right behind us on our heels. Once we finally reached the ditch, we started hiding. Not so bad, I thought. I stuck my head up and peeked around and saw that she was driving past us down the road to my house. So now I actually am scared at that moment, because if she's driving in that direction, it definitely means she was looking for us. So I tell my friend we gotta get out of here, and we start crouch running through the woods like Arthur in Red Dead, and take the long route to my house. I'm looking everywhere for the red truck because I know she went down this road that goes to my house, but she wasn't anywhere to be found. We see the house and just book it till we reach the driveway. We climb back in through the window, and I kind of checked to make sure we weren't caught, and then we just sat back and breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God. That was weird, I said, and peeked out through the window for further assurance the red truck was gone. Well, shit, I couldn't have been more wrong. As if some sort of horrible revelation was sent to traumatize me for the rest of my life. There she was in the red truck, just cruising by my house, down the street we had just been on not 1 minute ago. Same truck, same person, same erratic driving. She's literally driving past my house, which was totally out of the way from where we first saw her. I'll never forget it as long as I live. She really followed us and took off after us like she was going to run us down. I always think what the hell she could have possibly wanted. Thank God she never caught us, as this already is a very disturbing memory for me.